The job was supposed to be easy. Clear a new swath through the lower slopes of Copper Ridge, set up the temporary camp, and prep for the heavy machinery coming in the spring. Just me, sealers, and old Manfred out in the middle of nowhere for a month. We were 3 days in, and the silence was already getting to me. Not the good kind of silence, the kind that lets you think. This was a heavy, suffocating quiet, like the forest was holding its breath. We'd seen plenty of deer, a bear cub or two, but no sign of anything else. No tracks that stood out, no odd calls, just the steady drone of insects and the rustle of leaves under our boots. Manfred, who'd logged these lands his whole life, kept muttering about the old ways and things best left undisturbed, but we just laughed it off. He was a good storyteller, that was all. It was sealers who found it. We were clearing a patch of especially ancient-looking trees, massive things with trunks wider than my truck, roots like writhing serpents. Sealers was on the chainsaw, and he suddenly went quiet. Too quiet. I walked over, stepping through the dense undergrowth, and saw him staring into a fissure in the ground, a natural fault line that the roots had tried to bridge, failing in places. The air down there felt cold. Not just cool, but a deep, bone-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the outside temperature. Sealers shone his headlamp down into the dark opening. "Look at this," he whispered, his voice hushed. Below, half buried in the damp earth and thick roots, was something massive. It looked like a tree trunk, but wrong. Too smooth in places, too angular in others. And then I saw the texture. Not wood, more like polished, dark stone, but somehow organic. Manfred came over, moving slower than usual. He took one look, and his face drained of color. "Leave it," he said, his voice a low growl. "Leave it be. It's not wood. It's not rock. It's old." He wouldn't say anything more, just kept shaking his head, his eyes fixed on the thing in the ground. Sealers, though, was fascinated. He had a pickaxe with him, and before I could stop him, he began chipping away at the earth around it. The sound was dull, rhythmic. With each strike, more of the strange object was revealed. It was clearly massive, extending deep into the earth, and as sealers cleared more dirt, we started to see patterns. Not carvings, exactly, but naturally occurring striations, like grain in stone, but too regular to be natural. It felt like something was being unearthed, something that should have stayed buried. The air grew colder. A scent, too, started to emerge, a strange, earthy smell mixed with something acrid, metallic, like old iron and wet soil. Sealers managed to clear enough to expose a section about 2 feet wide, running several feet down. It curved, like a massive limb, or a forgotten segment of a statue too ancient to comprehend. He reached out to touch it, and Manfred let out a strangled cry. "Don't!" he yelled, but it was too late. Sealers' hand made contact. For a moment, nothing. Then, a faint tremor ran through the ground, barely perceptible, but I felt it in my teeth. The air grew heavy, like before a storm, and the forest around us seemed to dim, even though the sun hadn't moved. Sealers pulled his hand back quickly, his fingers brushing something else in the damp earth. A small, dark shard, like obsidian, but impossibly sharp. He picked it up, curious. That was his first mistake. That night, back at our makeshift camp, the air was thick with unease. Manfred sat by the fire, poking at the flames, mumbling to himself about the things below and sleepers. Sealers, despite the old man's warnings, kept that shard of dark material. He'd tried to scratch his knife with it earlier, and the blade had simply dulled, leaving no mark on the shard. It was impossibly hard. He was convinced it was some kind of ancient, alien mineral. I tried to sleep, but every snap of a twig, every whisper of the wind, sounded amplified. I kept thinking about the cold coming from the fissure, and that strange, metallic earth smell. Around midnight, Sealers stirred. He was whispering, muttering something unintelligible. When I looked, he was shivering, staring wide-eyed at the tent flap. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a breath. I hadn't heard anything, but Sealers was insistent. He described a faint scratching, a soft scuttling sound coming from the direction of the fissure. He swore he'd heard it growing closer. Manfred was already awake, sitting bolt upright, clutching his old hunting rifle. His eyes were wide with a terror I'd never seen in him. "It's awake," he choked out. "It knows we disturbed it." We sat in silence for what felt like hours, listening. The scratching grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't a squirrel, not a badger. It was too heavy, too deliberate. And then, from just outside the tent, came a new sound, a wet, dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled through damp leaves. Our fire, left to smolder, suddenly flared up, casting long, dancing shadows of skeletal branches onto the tent walls. The scratching stopped. The dragging stopped. Absolute silence fell. And then, a breath. Not human. A long, raspy inhale right by the tent flap, so close I could feel the fabric subtly draw in. It smelled like the cold earth from the fissure, but stronger, overlaid with something else, something ancient and vaguely putrid. Manfred aimed his rifle, his hands shaking violently. "Don't move," he whispered through clenched teeth. A dark shape pressed against the tent, distorting the canvas. It was immense, with a sharp, angular projection that looked like a horn, or perhaps a claw. And then, the tent flap slowly, deliberately, began to pull open from the bottom. We saw only a sliver of what was outside, a patch of dark, leathery skin, impossibly thick, moving with a terrible slowness. And then, a single, glowing yellow eye, like an ember in the deep night, peered into the gap. Silas screamed, a high, strangled sound, and fired his pistol wildly through the tent fabric. The creature hissed, a sound like grinding stone and escaping steam, and then the tent was torn open. I only caught a glimpse. A mountainous, ancient thing, all knotted sinew and dark, petrified hide, moving with an unnatural, ponderous grace. It had too many limbs, too many joints, all ending in cruel, black talons. It reached into the tent, not for us, but for Silas's hand, where he still clutched the dark shard. Its fingers, thick as tree trunks, closed around his arm. Silas screamed again as the creature effortlessly ripped him from the tent. Manfred opened fire with his rifle, but the bullets only seemed to annoy it. I saw Silas, held aloft, the shard still in his grasp, before a crushing sound and then silence. I didn't wait. I ran, blindly, into the dark forest, the creature's immense, dragging footsteps echoing behind me. It wasn't hunting me. It had what it wanted. I don't know what it was, or how long it slept, but I know this. The mountains hold things older than memory, and some pieces of them are best left buried, undisturbed, in the earth's cold, silent embrace. And now, something else is awake, and it is waiting. Thank you for listening. If this story found you in the dark, subscribe and turn on notifications. A new tale waits every night.